Hi everyone, welcome to Access to Work Made Simple. In this video I'm going to talk about what Access to Work is, who can get it, how you go about applying for it, and what you can expect during the whole process. So I'm AJ Harman. I'm a coach and an executive function trainer. I work mainly with adults with neurodivergent conditions such as autism, ADHD, dyslexia, etc. And I work with lots of Access to Work clients. I take them through my 12-week one-to-one coaching program, which is also just being made into a group coaching program from Thought to Focused. So let's start with what is Access to Work. So it's a government grant scheme, and it's quite a sort of secret thing. I mean, not many people know about it at all. It's not advertised a lot, but a lot of people are eligible to apply for it, which is why I want to talk about it a bit more and let people know about it, what's available out there. So the idea behind it is it's to help people in their work or in their business if they've got challenges for doing their jobs, such as neurodivergent conditions, which is why I get to work with people. But also it's things like physical disabilities, physical illnesses, even down to temporary things like breaking your leg or something during that time period, when your leg's healing and whatever. If it impacts what you do at work, you're eligible to apply for this. It also covers mental health conditions, so things like depression and anxiety. So the funding, it's not kind of a pot of money that you get, but rather it's you get the funding to purchase certain things that will help you in your work. So there might be equipment for your office or your workplace, might be software on the computer. It could be support to do your job. So there's something called a support worker, which I'll go into, coaching, mental health professionals, sort of one-to-one sessions with a mental health professional, if that's appropriate. And other kind of support worker type things like a note taker, for instance, or an interpreter. And I think it's something like £65,000 is actually available, depending. There's kind of a not a means testing, but a sort of needs assessment that goes on. They work out exactly what you need, but there's up to that amount available for each person who applies. So who can get it? It's adults and young adults from 16 and above. You've got to be resident in England, Scotland, or Wales. I think there is something else, but I don't know the specifics in Ireland. You've got to be in paid work, but paid work can be full or part-time. It can be an apprenticeship. It can be something like a work placement or a work trial, work experience, anything like that. The only thing that's not covered is voluntary work. And if you work in the civil service, Access to Work doesn't cover you. I think that's because the civil service have their own sort of version of it, or their own support available. So you can be in paid work, you can be about to start a new job, or you can be about to return to work, and you can be self-employed. So with all of those things, if you have a condition that affects your ability to do your job, or that affects your ability to get to and from work, or communicating in interviews is another thing that you can get support for. So if you've got a condition that makes it difficult for you to communicate properly in interviews, you can get help for that. Okay, so it's a grant and not a loan. You don't have to pay it back. It doesn't affect other benefits that you get. If you're self-employed, or if your employer, the company that you work for, has fewer than 49 employees, then 100% of the grant is funded. If you work for an employer who has more than 49 employees, then they're expected to fund 20% of it, and Access to Work fund the other 80%. So there are several steps, and so the reason I'm talking about this, as well as working with Access to Work clients, I've also got my own Access to Work funding. So I've been through this process myself, and I've seen it from the other side with clients as well. So when I applied, I just kind of knew that it was available, but didn't know very much about it at all, and kind of went in not knowing what to expect, not knowing what any of the stages were, sort of really trying to feel my way through it and having no idea how long it would take and all that kind of thing. So that's why I want to lay it out like this, so that you know what to expect if you apply, what kind of things, what are the different steps, how long roughly is it likely to take, and yeah. So, and also there's a guide that currently putting together. So all of this, if you're watching back or you're watching live, you don't have to sit and take copious notes, because I'm putting all of this into a free guide. So if you would like to have a copy of that free guide, if you pop something in the comments to let me know, and then as soon as it's ready, which should be within the next couple of days, I can either myself or Steph can pop a link to you so that you can get hold of that. Okay, so step one is that you apply, and you can apply online or you can apply by the phone, and there is an Access to Work helpline. I'm not sure if Steph is currently with us, but when she is, I think she'll pop the link for applying online into the comments, and the phone number if you're wanting to phone. But they'll be in the guide as well. So when you first make your application, the things you're going to need are your contact details, the address and the postcode of the place where you work. So if you're self-employed and that's from home, obviously that will be your own address. But if not, it will be your workplace address. A contact at your workplace, the contact details and the name of a specified person at your workplace. But they won't contact you until they've got your permission to do that. If you're self-employed, you're going to need to have your unique taxpayer reference, your UTR, available, and give them that. And then you need to know about, obviously, what the condition is and how it affects your work and what support you think you need. And later on, you'll see that there's a sort of more complex needs assessment that they'll do. So quite often, people don't really know what support is available or what they can get. So you can put it in fairly general terms at this point, because later on you're going to be having contact with people from Access to Work and from the assessment service. So you'll be able to go into much more detail, but you can just kind of say, for instance, a lot of my clients have got ADHD, they've got executive functioning struggles. So they can say, things like that, they've got ADHD, they struggle with planning and organising, organising their time. Any of those sort of executive function type tasks, they're kind of management of your job. So you can put, and if it's what support you think you need, you can say something like, now I made the mistake of saying that, I kind of knew someone who had an Access to Work grant, and they had a VA, a virtual assistant. So basically like a personal assistant, but it was virtual. And I thought, that would be so helpful. And also, one of the big things I struggle with is doing the accounts and all that kind of thing, maybe a bookkeeper. And yes, that would be brilliant. But I did find out during the process that, that's the type of thing that's going to benefit any business owner. It's not necessarily what you need, the support that you need for your particular condition. So they don't fund a VA or a bookkeeper, etc., but they do fund people and things that are going to help you with those things. So I'll go into that shortly, but kind of if you just say that, you know, you need support to do X, Y, and Z within your job at this stage, that will kind of probably be enough just to kind of give them an idea. So at that point, so you make your application. Those are the things that you're going to need for doing that. I think people might be just joining us. Just to let you know, there's going to be a free guide that has all of this information in. So don't worry if you've missed anything at the beginning, or if you don't, you don't have to make copious notes and things. If you just let me know in the comments that you'd like a copy of the guide, and we can get that to you as soon as it's ready in a couple of days. Right, so then once you've done that initial application, you've then got to wait. Unfortunately, this is probably the longest part of it. You have to wait, I think roughly at the moment, I've heard that the wait is about 20 weeks. So you've got about 5 months to wait. So the sooner you can get that initial application in, the better. Sorry, I've got sunlight coming in, but I can't easily get over to the blinds while I'm on here. So I'll just try and sit back a bit. Okay, so you have that wait, but then eventually, if if they feel that that is warranted, that you're going to get this funding, they will assign a case manager to you, an Access to Work case manager, and they'll contact you. And it's usually by phone, but I think you can ask specifically for it to be by email if you don't like communicating by phone and so on. They'll contact you initially just to kind of ask you for more information about your condition, kind of discuss your application, discuss the kind of needs that you have, or the things that you're struggling with. I think at that point they'll ask, if you're employed, they'll ask for permission to contact your employer, and they'll arrange for a workplace needs assessment. And if they need any more information from you, they'll ask. So with me, because my coaching business was fairly new at the point that I was going through this, I had to put together a business plan. And that was no mean feat, considering I've got ADHD and all the rest of it. So it took a while to do, and I had help to do that. They might not give you a huge amount of time to do things like that, but you can push back. At least my case manager was very kind of flexible with that, and just said, if you need more time, just let me know. And I kind of had to push back a couple of times to get that ready, and then I got that in. So then they'll arrange for a workplace needs assessment. And this will either be by phone, it might be by video call. If you're employed, it could even be that they will come and visit you within your workplace and actually see the situation where you are and what you need. And basically, you talk to them about the specifics of what you need. And this can be a bit hit and miss, I've heard. So I think Access to Work get an external agency to do this bit. And the person I had was excellent. She knew so much, especially about neurodiverse conditions. She knew the sort of things I might be struggling with, the sort of sensory things. She asked me loads and loads of questions, and we really dug into the things that I find difficult, and what kind of support might really help me, what kind of software might help me, what kind of equipment within the office might help, and all that kind of thing. I've heard that some are not as helpful, so it is a bit of a it's the luck of the draw who you get. So the more that you can be sort of proactive with it, and maybe you have thought beforehand what you think might be helpful, speak to other people who've had Access to Work funding, things like that, it might really help, because then you can be more proactive in asking for what you want as well. They'll then produce a report. They'll have recommendations that they'll send to Access to Work about what they think you need to have in place. So then the next step is that Access to Work will assess that report. I think they have a committee, like an approvals committee, so it will go to be approved. And then as soon as it's been approved, your case manager will send you an award letter, which will, excuse me, detail exactly what you've got funding for. And they'll tell you the overall amount, and then they'll tell you all the different aspects that they're giving you funding for. And they'll have specific prices. So they'll have done research into how much it costs from different suppliers, and they'll give you the supplier contact information, because it's then up to you or your employer to purchase those things. When it comes to the support worker, they usually ask you to get 3 quotes. So the sooner you can do that, and in fact, if you even have this ready beforehand, you know, during that long wait when you're waiting, you could do some research into finding out any good support workers. And I can highly recommend Steph, because and I think next week we're going to do something a bit more on the things that I've got, so I can show you the bits and pieces that I got with my Access to Work funding. And I think Steph will talk to you as well about what it's like to be a support worker for neurodivergent people getting funding from Access to Work. So yeah, you can, you know, so the idea is that not all support workers are equal, basically. Some are going to be better than others, and if you can get someone who works with neurodivergent people or is neurodivergent themselves, so they really get and understand what you need, it's not just like a typical VA that you need someone that really understands. And that's where, you know, I've really really got lucky with Steph, because she's absolutely perfect and she knows exactly what I need and how I need it. So then you, so you get your 3 quotes and you submit it to them. Being a government, being a government agency, they're more likely to go with the lowest quote. However, you can argue your case. So if your quotes, you know, there was one, in my case, I had 3 quotes, but only one of them actually was really perfect for me and was exactly what I needed. And it wasn't the lowest quote, but I was able to kind of argue the case that actually it's going to be much better value for money, and she was going to actually support me in the way that I needed. So you can kind of discuss with them and get the one that you want. And similarly, well, with coaching as well, you can go with the people that they suggest, but you can also find your own. And again, I think as long as it comes within the funding that you've been allocated, as long as the cost comes within the funding you've been allocated, they are open to you going with who you want to. So then at that point, you purchase the equipment or the services with the information on the form, and then Access to Work send you forms which you claim back the money. However, if you can't, especially if you're self-employed or whatever, and you can't pay for things up front, one way you can do that is to contact all of the suppliers and get them to send you pro forma invoices. And then you fill out the claim forms as usual, but send the invoices, the pro forma invoices with them, and Access to Work will pay directly. And then as soon as it's all paid and everything, you'll get the equipment. The support worker and the coaching costs. So if you're employed, what seems to happen is that your employer will pay for the coaching up front and then claim it back from Access to Work. However, if you're self-employed, what seems to be happening more is that, in the same way with a support worker, you claim as you go along. So you've got these claim forms that you fill in every month and send it off, and then they'll pay. So you either pay that up front to the coach or the support worker, or Access to Work pay them directly. And that's something that I've found. So it seems like they change their mind, or whoever you speak to, it's really differently. So that's one thing to really look out for, because I've had, with some of my clients where I've been told I just need to submit my whole invoice and send it with a claim form. And then they've said, well, no, you need to fill out, like every month, you need to fill out what the sessions have been and claim monthly. So that's just something to watch out for. And then once you've got all that in place, but you can renew it, especially for things like ongoing support. So support workers and coaches and things like that, you can renew it for up to 3 years, as long as you're still eligible. So you need to just check, that the condition or whatever that you have, is still the same. Your needs are still the same. And then you apply. So 12 weeks before your grant is about to run out, that you've already got in place. So 12 weeks before, you can then reapply for the following year, and that's for up to 3 years. So then finally, I've just got a few tips really that I've kind of learned by experience. So as I've kind of said, that the main one is, if necessary, get help beforehand from someone who's done it before or who knows the system or something, so that you can get really clear on exactly what you struggle with and what would help you. Because going into that knowing what you're asking for will perhaps make the process that little bit easier, and you're more likely to get the things that you need. Because if you're anything like me, you're going to think, well, I don't really know what I need, and I don't know what would help me, and I don't know what's available, and then you may end up missing out on something that could be really good. When you're talking to anybody, so when you're talking to the case manager when they first contact you, when you're talking to the assessor during the needs assessment, think about yourself on your worst day. How, the things that you struggle with when you're having a really bad day, rather than when it's your best day. And then I've mentioned that, so there's certain things they won't fund, but if you're using their language, instead of a VA, you ask for a support worker. And the idea is that instead of just taking tasks off your plate and doing that within your business, a support worker helps you to do the things in your business in whatever way. And as I say, Steph will do a bit of a talk next week on how she, because it's not just me, she's got other Access to Work clients as well. And she has worked with people in the past as well. So she's got a really, really good idea of the sort of things that will help. And finally, I'd say read all of the instructions and follow them really, really carefully. And this is a big one for me. I'm absolutely terrible at that. And respond as quickly as you can. Again, sometimes I feel like I've got all the time in the world to do things, but the problem is the process can be so long if things have to continually go back and forth. So, it took quite a long time. I suppose, when did I think I got my award letter probably about 6 or 7 months after my initial application. But, there were a few stages more in mind. Like I say, I had to put together a business plan and things like that in between. But if you can just be as proactive as you possibly can, respond to them as soon as they ask you for something, send claim forms and things like that as soon as you possibly can, and just make sure that you fill out the correct forms, you give the right information, because basically they just send it back to you, and it's not even straight away. Weeks can go by and you don't know what's going on, and then you suddenly get an email or it's usually email, it is for me anyway, saying, oh, you've not filled this out properly, you've not done the correct form. or you've not included the invoice or something like that, and it just gets kind of thrown back at you, and then you've got to sort it all out again and send it. So if you can be on top of it as much as you possibly can and get things back, and I know that's what we struggle with, so if you can get any help to do it, or have a buddy, someone else who's going through it at the same time, you can be accountable to each other for getting done anything. It will just really, really speed up the process. So I think that's it. And as I say, there's going to be a free guide with all this information in. Just have a little look at the comments and see if anyone has any questions. Oh, Steph had mild technical difficulties. Oh, I'm glad you're here now, Steph. Thank you. Oh, and thank you. Yeah, Steph has said if for any reason the beginning's missed from the recording, she'll make sure that the recordings, or rather, I think do you mean if anybody missed the beginning, that Steph will get the recording to you all? Oh, Janet would like the guide. Great. If anyone else would like the guide, just pop in the comments. Okay, so Steph's put a link there. You can pre-register for the guide. So if you just go and register for that, it'll automatically come straight out to you as soon as it's ready. And Steph's put the link for the online application page for Access to Work, and then the telephone numbers. Thank you, Steph. Oh, there was an issue, was there? It didn't come through to Facebook. Oh, what a pain. Right, okay. Great. Do big organisations handle Access to Work themselves, or should I contact Access? I think you have to do the initial contact, but presumably you would need to you'd need to have a contact where you work who agrees to it and will be the contact for them to get in touch with when it gets to that point. And obviously, and I think, some people say, what if their work doesn't agree to fund the 20%? I think Access to Work can't force them to, but I've heard that they will kind of resend information and say, look, this person really needs to have this support, and that they will kind of try and get it on your for you. Okay, Janet's just asking Steph if she has in-work clients. Oh yeah, the 20% is usually tax deductible, so that's a good point to tell them. Yeah, and actually, I think I think the reason, so if you move work, it's up to the organisation whether they allow you to take the things that you've got funding for. And obviously, if they've paid 20%, you may not be allowed to. But for that reason, I believe that the support worker, actually, I don't know, Steph, you might know about this. I know with the coaching, even if you're employed, 100% of the coaching, I believe, is paid by Access to Work. And I presume that's because obviously that is going completely to you, and the employer doesn't kind of get any benefit from, well, apart from, increased, efficiency or productivity or, better mental health and everything at work. But it's obviously something you take with you, that coaching and that training that you've had. So I don't believe they ask your employer to contribute to that, but I'm not sure about the support worker. Okay, so yeah, Steph has a mix of employed and self-employed. Yeah, that's what I would have thought, Steph. The support worker is tied to the person. Ah, right. Okay. So yeah, the support worker would go with you to a new employment. Oh, great, Janet. I hope it's been really helpful. I hope that does turn out to be something that you might be able to get. I don't know about the peripherals. That's something that I saw that you'd have to ask. I believe it's a question on the, like a frequently asked question on the government website. Oh, that's my alarm going off. Yeah. Generally, all of the funding is attached to the person. I think if an employer refused to let someone take their peripherals, it would be something we'd need to seek advice on. Yes, potentially. I just do remember seeing something. What I can do, actually, is I can double check that. I can double check that for putting into the guide. Make sure. Fairly sure. Let me just check my notes exactly what I wrote down when I was looking at that. Also, the one thing that has been slightly confusing is whether or not you need to have a diagnosis in order to be able to access this funding. And I've heard in two different places, no, you don't need to actually have a formal diagnosis, or yes, you do. The one thing I definitely saw in writing on their website is that for mental health support, you don't need to have a diagnosis in order to get funding for like a mental health professional or any kind of mental health support. So that's a definite. The neurodiversity stuff, I'm not absolutely sure of, and I think you would need to discuss that with the case manager. But I have had information from kind of externally that says that you don't need to have a diagnosis. So yeah, I can't see immediately in my notes this thing about whether you take the equipment with you. So I'll double check that again, and Steph, we can get that into the guide. Into my work so I can explain to HR and my line manager. Yeah, so Steph can really help you with that. She helped me a lot before I kind of had to put in my application. But I mean, the type of thing that she helps me with is kind of managing my energy levels. She checks in with me. We can do like co-working, body doubling, things like that to help me focus. She helps me with doing planning. I mean, there are literally a whole host of things. Your meeting's on the 15th, and the live that we're planning to do is on the 11th. So actually, we're going to go into a lot more detail about this next week. But you know Steph anyway, so you can get in contact with Steph if you want some more information via her. But very, very quickly, the things that I've had for my access to work funding. So because of my ADHD, needing to move around a lot to keep my focus, all that kind of thing, I've got an electronic stand desk so that I can, not so that I'm not just sitting in one place all the time. I've got a kind of footstool that wobbles, so I can literally kind of move my feet around and move my legs around all the time while I'm working, while I'm focusing. I have a lot of visual kind of interference and sensory issues from using computers a lot and things like that. So I've got a filter that goes over my screen that blocks out a lot of the blue light and things like that. What else have I got? I've got software. I've got mind mapping software that helps me plan and visualize things much more easily. I've got captioning software, and Brain in Hand. I'll talk a lot about this next week. So Brain in Hand are brilliant. That's an app that you can have on your phone, where you sort of work with someone to get it all set up exactly for you, all the support you need, the information, and all sorts of things. And I'm still learning about that. I've only had a couple of sessions with a person in setting it up. So I'll be able to talk a lot more about that later. But if you want to look up Brain in Hand, that's really useful. And that's something you can get funding for. And then I've got a support worker, and the way that I did that, so basically how I became clear on what, obviously I spoke to Steph, so that was really helpful. But first of all, I sat and I thought about my job, and I literally wrote down every single task that I do with my work. And obviously it's actually 3 businesses that I'm running. So I just thought about every single task that I do, and I kind of wrote it all down, and then thought about, if I had somebody to help me, what could they help me with? And then kind of talking to Steph helped clarify exactly how they could help me. And coaching. So then I've got a coach, and as I say, I'm a coach for lots of other access to work people as well. So that can be straightforward kind of life coaching to help you cope with things, but also kind of executive functioning training. So specific things that you can do to help yourself within your job, strategies you could use, tools you could use, things like that. Oh great, looks like Steph has got access to work. Oh yes, that rings a bell. Access to work can pay to transfer your equipment if you change job. And she's put a link there, so you can go and have a look at that if you're employed and you want to know about if you move jobs. Yes, you can join my group. Yes, absolutely. So I do my program that I do with Access to Work clients is a 12-week program, and I can either do that on a one-to-one basis, or as the group program that I've just set up. So, and that will have a community attached to it, and it will just be slightly more structured. There will be kind of training videos and worksheets and things for you to work through, and then Zoom calls where we all get together and we share our issues, things that we're learning, how we can implement it. So yeah, that would be able to be paid for by Access to Work, definitely. Yeah. So anyway, if anyone's, I'll come back to the comments later on as well, and check if there's anything that I haven't answered, or any comments that I've not seen. I'll come back and have a look. And don't forget, if you're watching the recording, put #replay and let us know if you'd like a copy of the guide to Access to Work. Steph has put a link in if you want to register, to get that as soon as it's ready, because we're just putting it together now. Excellent. Okay. Thanks very much. Oh, there's someone there saying thank you, but I'm not sure who it is, because StreamYard don't have permission to show. So there we go. Show, that's all I can see from this end. So I'm not sure who it is, but you're very, very welcome. I hope it was helpful. Okay. Oh, Beverly. Oh, brilliant. Excellent. I'm glad you're here, Beverly. I hope it's helpful. That's great. Okay, so I will see you next week where I can show you some of the things that I've got, but also Steph can really share her knowledge. She's got so much knowledge with this, and it'll be lovely to hear from her next week as well. So until then, have a good week. Bye.